Not too long ago, many pipe bands in Scotland were sponsored by the local colliery, coal mining operations that dotted much of the country's central belt and east coast. Wilmot and Danderhall, Bowhill and Seafield, Monkton Hall, Dysart and Dundonald were bands of the past that were once supported by and named after collieries. Shotts and Dykehead Caledonia's roots are as a colliery-supported band. The people of the village of Shotts once depended on coal mining as the major employer. Going back to the 1930s, the Whitrig Colliery Pipe Band was sponsored by coal mining in Whitburn. The band rose to Grade 1 status under pipe major Johnny Barnes and eventually changed sponsorship and its name to Polkemmet Colliery. In the early 1980s, Robert Matheson and Jim Kilpatrick became pipe major and leading drummer of Polkemmet Colliery. They were in their early 20s and both learned through the Whitrig juvenile system. Matheson and Kilpatrick had played in Shotts and Dykehead for several years and brought to Polkemmet the leadership skills they learned from Shotts legends, pipe major Tom McAllister and leading drummer Alec Duthard. Polkemmet quickly rose to become a significant force in Grade 1, with a young and highly talented group of players ready to do things a bit differently. The 1980s vintage of Polkemmet did concerts, made albums, and won a lot of contests. At a time when the Strathclyde Police were winning a record 6 consecutive world championships, Polkemmet was hard on their tail. Polkemmet came close to winning major competitions, finishing second several times, and they actually beat the Strathclyde Police at several non-major contests, which back then normally attracted more than 10 Grade 1 bands. After the 1986 season, when Polkemmet was still riding high, Matheson and Kilpatrick returned to Shotts, a band that was clinging to life. Polkemmet continued for a year under pipe major Ronnie Laurie and leading drummer Sandy Kogower, but many of its members dispersed to other Grade 1 bands. Polkemmet would go on to win major championships under pipe major David Barnes, son of Johnny Barnes, and leading drummer James King, but by the late 1990s the band suffered more personnel losses and ultimately closed down. The 1980s version of Polkemmet is important to remember. The band's 1985 studio album, From Celtic Roots, is still heralded as a major success. Kilpatrick produced a championship-winning drum corps featuring 12 snare drummers, unheard of at the time, and the group can even be credited with introducing vests or waistcoats as the de facto uniform standard. Pipe's drums set out to get together a few of the members of the 1980s Polkemmet Pipe Band. Brian Lamond joined Polkemmet as a teenager in 1985. From Inverkeithing, Scotland, he was a fast-fingered prodigy and a prized pupil of Captain John Macallen. Lamond played with Polkemmet until 1988 when he joined the Grade 1 Vale of Atholl. He lived in Australia for several years and was a member of the Victoria Police when the band won the 1998 World Championship. He later became pipe major of the Grade 1 Dysart and Dundonald, and he still competes successfully in solo competitions. An ex-Scots Guardsman, Davy McRobert joined Polkemmet in 1985, enjoying the band's most successful years under Matheson and Kilpatrick. He would later become a member of the British Caledonian Airways, playing under pipe majors Harry McNulty and Roddy McLeod, and eventually was a fly-in member of the Los Angeles Scots. He lives in Edinburgh these days. A native of Preston, England, Ian Morris was a stalwart Polkemmet piper. He had moved to Scotland and worked as a mechanical engineer and soon found a place in the ranks of Polkemmet. He'd go on to be a member of British Caledonian Airways. Now retired from competing, he lives in South Queensferry, Scotland. A native of Preston, England, Ian Morris was a stalwart Polkemmet piper. He had moved to Scotland and worked as a mechanical engineer and soon found a place in the ranks of Polkemmet. He'd go on to be a member of Shotts and Dykehead in British Caledonian Airways, and he's now retired from competing. He lives in South Queensferry, Scotland. Gordon Stafford had learned his piping through the Whitrig juveniles and Johnny Barnes. After serving with the Scots Guards, he joined Polkemmet and was one of several charismatic members. He would become co-pipe sergeant in 1987 before becoming pipe major of the nearby Grade 2 Torfickan and Bathgate, which he took to Grade 1. Stafford recently retired from competition, but keeps a close ear to the scene. We hope you enjoy our two-part conversation with members of the Polkemmet Pipe Band of the 1980s. We are here with the 1980s Polkemmet Colliery Pipe Band members getting together. We've got Davy McRobert, Gordon Stafford, Ian Morris, and Brian Lamond all getting together. Thanks very much for for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Share some memories about a band that lasted a relatively short time, but made quite a mark for the time. So I just want to maybe start out, the 1980s, that version of the band, under Robert Matheson and Jim Kilpatrick. What are some of your memories of the 1980s vintage Polkemmet?
I think it was a band that was ahead of its time at that time. We pushed some boundaries. It was a band also that worked hard, but certainly played hard.
Yeah.
We had some great times
Absolutely.
on and off the park, but some of the performances on the park were out of this world for that time.
What about some of the standout performances, Davey, you were talking earlier about?
Best two, I think. 86 for me were Birmingham, which is the best contest I've ever played in. As I said earlier on, I thought somebody was going to trail a drone or something, and when we stopped clean, I just thought, oh my God, we won this in the park. But judging circumstances said otherwise. And then the Worlds as well that year, which was great.
Yeah.
And probably should have nicked it, but we were under a Strathclyde police umbrella at that time.
Yeah.
I like the World's 85 for me at Hamilton. I think we'd just come back from a concert that we did in L'Oreal, and I thought both performances that day were stuck out. We were third, fair enough. I think we got the same number of points as SFU were third, or 78s were third.
Yeah.
But I thought that was for me that was a standout performance. Birmingham 86 was another one. I thought I saw them.
Horrendous.
Yeah, whatever. But I think we did and some of the smaller contests we did 85. I think we were unbeaten. Yeah, I think some of the
Yeah. And some of the trips, though, like going to L'Oreal, those are pretty memorable. I think. Brian, you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, really memories.
Andrew, I said to you earlier, I was very young at the time, and well, you know what it was like. So I just remember having a great time,
Yeah.
The guys were on about performances. I wasn't really interested in performances, It was all about having a good time, and
Yeah. That's what bands are all about.
I liked the music. The music was good. That's what attracted me to the band.
Yeah.
That was my first grade 1 band, was Polkemmet.
I think, as Gordon said, everybody worked their backsides off to make sure they were ready for when we went out.
Right.
Well, we did two concerts in '85. One in that Ballymena concert was, for me, was fantastic, and we also repeated that in L'Oreal the same year, which some of the music on that. It's on that. Most of it's on the Celtic Roots LP.
You know what I remember about the concert? You remember the drummers painted their sticks with the luminous paint?
Yeah.
And it didn't work.
Yeah,
There was just sticks going everywhere.
Because
the lights went out.
the lights were out.
They all went crazy when they came off. But I remember that.
We all had to have bow ties. Remember, we had
I think
to
it was
have
Ballymena,
black
wasn't
bow
it?
ties. That was
Ballymena, and they forgot to put the blue light on. So that it would show
that's a bit all I can remember about that.
So it would show the sticks when they threw them up in the air. But maybe the front row of that concert could maybe see something, but nothing else.
And nobody else could see it.
Oh, crazy.
Drumsticks everywhere.
But again, from that concert we did the Celtic Roots album. And what I remember about that, again we pushed the boundaries, getting other guys in. The Saturday we recorded 75% of the album. Freezing cold, there was no heating whatsoever when we were doing the recording.
Yeah.
The snow was lying about 4 or 5 inches deep. We drove home on the Saturday, we came back on the Sunday. Some of us couldn't get home. We had to stay at David Robertson's at 6 years. And then we came back on the Sunday. Rab and Jim had managed to organise to get some heating put in, paraffin heaters.
We did the whole album.
And we recorded the whole album on the Sunday.
And a a lot of it was only one take. A lot of it we did in one
That was a
take.
great, that was a world-class album.
Yeah,
at the time.
one of the
Yes.
one of the medleys wasn't one take. I certainly remember
The second,
making a mistake in
I
the
think
second reel. No, it wasn't me.
no, the second medley wasn't the great. It wasn't. We played that first medley. Was it?
Same time.
Brigadier Snow. Was the first, was our number one medley that year. We had that off. I think it was the second medley we kind of struggled a little bit.
So the band, you know, definitely Robert Matheson had a strong vision musically. And
Yes.
the band was
Yeah.
wearing the grey jackets and the waistcoats and all that thing.
Which was unusual. I mean,
Very good.
everybody wore black jackets back then.
Yeah.
They definitely had a change towards something different, being different and stand out,
Yeah.
which is what he did. And that was Rab, maybe, and Jim at that time they decided that's what they were going to do.
So musically, you know, if you look back at the band, do you think the band stood out at that time? Brian, you mentioned joining the band because of the music.
I remember the first time I heard the band, I think it was at Markinch. I was playing with a grade 2 band at the time, and I remember they played Jack's Welcome,
Yeah.
was the opener. And I thought it was great. I think the Kesh Jig and Rockin' the Baby, it was in the same medley. And it was different, eh?
Yeah.
And that's what attracted me to the band, you know. And the grey jackets, the jackets looked nice.
It was musical. I think it was musical.
I think most 99% of that was down to Rab.
Oh,
It was
absolutely.
his influence.
We must give Jim as well. I mean, even when the sticks didn't work, our drummers were doing stuff that nobody else was doing. No other drum corps was doing.
So you listen back at it and it might not sound that different, or it might sound old-fashioned today, but at the time, really sticking your neck out, you know, and trying to make a mark differently, you know, with doing things differently, and being courageous.
I think people recognised it as well, because the crowds we used to have around us
Yeah.
at every contest we played at were just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just wanted to listen to Polkemmet.
And you wanted to play, I think we'll all agree, it's something we all wanted to play in. You know, I don't think anybody else was doing the same thing, but it's something we all wanted to play in. That's why we all joined the band in the first place, because it was doing maybe something different or looked something different,
Yeah.
and we all wanted to play in that.
I think most of us at that time were in their 20s,
Yeah.
so we were fairly young. Yeah, we'd
I
all
was
played
only
for
a
a
teenager,
while.
by the way. I was only a teenager.
You were the youngest.
Have you drank twice as much as the...
Something like that, aye.
You joined as a boy, and a year later you were a man.
With the
For
DK
different
talcum
reasons.
powder?
But aye, we're young, we're keen.
It was fun going to practices. I mean, sometimes practice can be a drag, but it was fun going to practices. We all wanted to go to, you know, it was to go and meet your friends, rather than you just go to practice. I think.
Robert Matheson used to come and get us. In fact, you should drive
Yeah.
and get me.
Yeah.
Wow.
If my
Take
car,
me to
a long way.
take
Yeah.
me to the practice and take me home.
yeah. If I couldn't get there, he used to come and pick whoever was up as
You
well.
put a lot into it. Eh?
Put a lot of work into it, Rab.
Yeah, you put me up, coming over.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of lifts.
He did a lot for that. He did a lot for us all.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
A big influence.
And, you know, so it was at a time, though, that the Strathclyde Police were, you know, in full sail. Like one of the world's greatest bands, still is today, on their string of consecutive world's victories, and almost unbeatable.
Absolutely.
But, you know, Polkemmet was there doing things differently and actually beat them several times. You know, maybe Les Mahago, I remember, as being one year.
I think that's what hurt a bit more at some of the major contests.
Yeah.
We played well at the smaller contests, and that seemed to be recognised, and we got victories.
But the majors...
But when we went to the majors, we played just as well. We didn't seem to get the recognition. And having said that you can't take anything away from
No.
Ian McClellan's band.
Oh,
They were
superb.
like a machine at that time, outstanding. But I do think there's a couple of times we should have won.
yeah, and there was, I think, was it Birmingham? Or-
Birmingham.
Yeah, 3 years,
13th.
13th. Yeah.
in the day. It's still going on to this. They look at it a bit more because it's not points anymore now. It's placings. So they can moan a bit more. I don't think you could do that with the points days, but you can do it now on the position days. So I think they are looking at that to try and even things out a little bit anyway. But it never happened in those days. It was just that was the points and that was what you got and that was it.
Yeah. It's easier to be a rogue judge and get away with it.
It was deflating
Because they just
that
needed
day.
to stick a couple of points off your 15 tone mark, and that was you.
Everybody came off that smiling, thinking that nobody had said, "Oh, don't like that." Everybody came off thinking. All round the band was great.
Absolutely.
And I think we came on. I think we won the drumming. I think maybe.
Oh yeah.
And I think well, we've got this. And then Bockhall won, and you think, well, and then we got third. I think it put that night was pretty down. Well, only for a little while.
Yeah. Very close. Second at Cowell.
Cowell.
Yeah.
Sacklight Leeds first.
I think we got second a couple of times at Cowell. Third a couple of times at the Worlds.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So knocking on the door.
Absolutely, all the time, I think. I think 84, 85, I think we were never out the prize list.
Yeah. And there was the Vale of Atholl were doing pretty adventurous stuff too.
Yeah.
For the Scottish bands. And Brian, you ultimately decided to join the Vale after a little while after Polkemmet. So, similar kind of ideas going on at the Vale?
Yeah, probably, yeah. Different though, it was different, it wasn't the same.
Yeah, but
Certainly wasn't the same.
it's not like Polkemmet was the only band doing things differently. Certainly the Vale.
I think the Vale were doing something. They were just coming up at the time, weren't they? I mean, when
Just,
85, 86.
By the time I joined them,
They were.
they were well on the way to,
Yeah.
they had their own style of playing, eh?
I think they won a major early 90s.
Yeah. I just joined because Gordon.
Yeah.
But they had a good influence with Gordon Duncan. I mean, if you look at the more innovative composers at the time, Rab was one,
Sure.
and Gordon was another. That you would say their compositions. So that, I think Rab's more leaned towards the ensemble side of things, and I think Gordon's more leaned towards piping
Creative.
and the creative.
Yeah, and Rob, I think, when he continued on, always with Jim, often would write tunes like that, I think, with percussion in mind. The percussion came first on some.
That's right. They worked together on it,
Yeah.
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 But to create the ensemble
Yeah.
effect and sound. And that was one thing that we did have at that time, was good ensemble.
The band also was kind of, I don't know, a little bit rebellious,
Yes.
That's why he
sometimes-
wrote Ragtime Pipers,
Right.
because that's why I think somebody said, look at this bunch of Ragtime Pipers coming up, and
Right.
Rab wrote a tune called Ragtime Pipers, which we did play in the selection.
Yeah.
I think we did play hard off the park.
Yeah.
Once the serious stuff was finished, the competition, then away we went. That was the first time that I'd seen the coffin coming out, the great big cool box filled with ice,
Like bubbling.
and any alcoholic drink that you wanted to mention was poured in, and
mixed.
perhaps half an orange, half an apple, and one bottle of lemonade.
And that was it.
Put the cover on,
Let it
leave
ferment.
then go out, and then come back in. By that time, it was ready and right, and that was us all night. Oh, fantastic.
Some trips like that, I remember the opening of the Macallen thing up in the Highlands that we
Yes.
went to do. That was a fun trip.
It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
yes.
forced the bus to stop on the way coming back. We stopped in Pitlochry. I think back then, we all did Bacardi and Coke. Everyone was drinking Bacardi and Coke, and we poured into some pub in Pitlochry. It was Bacardi time.
we did have, we did
Probably.
taste some of the Macallen
Yes.
in the boardroom, because we were left on our own, with some sandwiches and some warm beer, English beer. So we decided to try some of the whisky out of the canter. It could have been 10-year-old, 20-year-old or 100-year-old whisky. We didn't care. We took the decanter down and we lifted a glass gifted from Westminster, and we each had a small taste, and we drank that much that we had to top it up with water, put the decanter back and dried the glass with the curtains, and then sat with innocent faces. Yes, happy days.
And I remember a few cases of whiskey being loaded onto the bus in secret.
It's carnage. It's carnage coming home.
There was at least
I got a bottle home. There was a bottle. I got a bottle home.
there was at least two crates.
There was 2 crates. I think we drank
whiskey.
2 bottles on the way going home.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there was, we got a bottle. I think we nicked it. We took a bottle.
We got a bottle each.
We got a bottle each.
You have a memory of a pipe box going over a stone wall or something. Someone got fed up with the pipes and threw it over the wall. Yeah, so there were judges, obviously, and there were judges who sometimes had their favorites. But do you remember any judges who seemed to like Polkemmet especially?
Andrew Sturrock was one
Yeah.
that brings me to mind. I mean, he had his first in Birmingham. Trevor Deere, maybe?
Trevor Deere quite liked us as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to think of judges back then.
Yeah.
J.K.
Alan Ronaldson, maybe?
Yeah, maybe Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, he was just new to the panel.
George Summers
Yeah.
Yeah.
was fairly new
George
back
definitely.
then.